This right here is a very special personal milestone. 3,000 subscribers. I know it's an odd number to highlight, but let me explain. Back in 2019, I'd been making videos for around 3 years or so, and before I made the switch to the content you're seeing on the channel today, the channel's growth had stagnated for a good year or so. I just couldn't seem to tick the subscriber count over from 200 to 300, and I really had to reflect on what exactly I wanted to do with this YouTube channel, and really just find out what I really would enjoy creating. Well, I found it. I love making these retrospectives, and apparently you enjoy watching them as well, because in August 2019, I finally surpassed that 300 subscriber mark. And not 2 years later, here we are celebrating 3,000 subscribers. It really is something special, and I can't thank you all enough for your support. I appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to watch my videos, leave likes, and commenting your own thoughts. I seriously am just blown away by all of your support, and all I can really say is thank you, and I hope you enjoy today's video. Insomniac Games is one of my favorite studios working today, which I'm sure most of you know by now, given my Sunset Overdrive video is one of the most successful videos I've ever made. I love the original Spyro trilogy, Ratchet and Clank, Sunset Overdrive, Song of the Deep, Spider-Man, and yes, I love Resistance. I save Resistance for last because the other games I spoke of, whilst having their differences from one another, still feel like Insomniac games, and Resistance, at least to me, has always felt like the company's black sheep, or odd one out. As a fan of Insomniac, it's that one series that I don't think gets enough limelight, and as a Resistance fan, well, that bothers me. Resistance has always been that series in my eyes that truly competed with Halo back in the console wars prime of the PS3 and Xbox 360. But because Resistance really only existed within that singular generation, I think it can get forgotten. Which is why I wanted to start revisiting the series today. And I've been in a bit of a PS3 sort of mood lately after Sony's will they, won't they close down the PS3 store. And yes, I said series, so if you're a fan of Resistance, maybe even like how this video is going so far, and want to see other games in the series be revisited, make sure you subscribe so you don't forget about me. But for now, it's time to find out if Resistance Fall of Man holds up almost 15 years later, or if my nostalgic brain may have lied to me for all these years. Resistance Fall of Man's development began sometime before the release of Ratchet Deadlocked, or Gladiator for the cool kids out there. There is no confirmed start point that I could find, but we know Fall of Man was in the works before or around Deadlocked, because Resistance Fall of Man was originally codenamed I-8 for being Insomniac's 8th game. But since Ratchet Deadlock released before Fall of Man, well, that meant this wasn't the case anymore. From the jump of Fall of Man's development, Insomniac knew they wanted to create another first-person shooter. Insomniac's first game was an FPS called Disruptor, and that's a game I feel like has truly been lost to time, which is a shame because my kid brain remembers it being a good time. In its early infancy, I-8 was heavily inspired by Starship Troopers and featuring a massive scale war between futuristic space marines and lizard aliens. Fearing players couldn't easily relate to such a spectacular conflict with no real base in reality, this idea was scrapped, and instead Insomniac set their sights on an alternate history setting. Insomniac's goal with creating Resistance and its take on an alternate history involving an alien invasion in 1950s England was to create this gritty and realistic game, and successfully blending elements the player could relate to or base in reality believably with alien elements. It's actually this pursuit of basing Fall of Man in reality, however, that would put both Sony and Insomniac Games in the bad books with the Church of England. That's right, in Fall of Man there is a virtual representation of Manchester Cathedral, and in this alternate history, you kill the swarms of Chimera within the cathedral walls. This caused a big hullabaloo at the time, making its way to the Prime Minister at the time addressing the issue, and it was just this crazy controversy that, not being from the UK, I had no idea about. In short, the church tried to sue Sony for copyright infringement, and this whole situation led to Resistance Fall of Man sales increasing drastically, with the help of a big Sony marketing campaign to begin with. Sony did end up apologizing for the offense taken, but this controversy and Fall of Man's inclusion of the cathedral ended up leading teenagers in particular to want to go and see the building in person. Again, very strange little controversy, but perhaps a win-win for both parties. Resistance Fall of Man released after roughly 2 years of development in North America in November 2006 and PAL regions in March 2007 as a launch title for the PlayStation 3, and was critically and commercially a big success, even being in Game of the Year contention during the stacked year that was 2007. And that's just how I remember Resistance Fall of Man. I remember it being one of my favorites that year, but how does it hold up today? The story for Resistance Fall of Man begins in the early 1930s, as an insect-like alien race known as the Chimera arrive in Russia. The Chimeran infection spread throughout Russia quickly and swiftly, using advanced technology to infect hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians, causing those infected to artificially evolve into the various Chimera forms. For over a decade, the Chimera infection was building strength and numbers within Russia, until 1949, when the Chimera launched an attack, overwhelming all of Europe in just a few weeks, and with England appearing safe for now, being that they're across the channel. A year later, in 1950, the Chimera managed to burrow beneath the English Channel and eventually take over England as well, leaving only scattered pockets of human resistance. The war all but lost. Another year later is where our story takes place. In July 1951, the United States finally decides to enter the conflict against the Chimera, deploying a 12,000-man task force, including our protagonist, Sergeant Nathan Hale, in an effort to liberate Britain and retrieve an unknown secret weapon to use against the Chimera. It was a good plan until we reach York, as our squad is quickly ambushed. We're all infected with the Chimera virus, and for some reason, Hale is the only one to survive the infection, being immune to the full infection and really just claiming the benefits like increased strength, better reflexes, the ability to heal, and the Chimera patented golden eyes. Hale continues along on his mission, eventually rescuing Captain Rachel Parker, whilst escaping a Chimeran conversion center, and Parker assists Hale over the comms for the rest of the journey, whilst also connecting Hale with the British forces. Hale and the British forces managed to deliver the secret weapon to a resistance headquarters, which is where we learned that said weapon is a chimeran creature called an angel, which the British have somehow managed to capture, which for being the chimera's most powerful form is pretty impressive. The captured angel is important as the British believe with it they could control the rest of the chimera through its telepathy. But when the angel tries to enter Hale's mind, he says no thank you and kills it. We continue on our merry way slaying chimera when we link up with Lieutenant Stephen Cartwright, a UK Royal Marines commando. Hale and Cartwright discover the chimera have set up a huge amount of metallic towers across Britain that are all connected by a network of tunnels and power conduits. Hale enters the underground tunnels, discovering the main tower is in London, and somehow Hale comes to the conclusion that destroying this particular tower means the defeat of the chimera. So that's what we do. We launch a final assault on the tower, destroy the reactor in a huge explosion, and cause a chain reaction, destroying all the towers and subsequent angels within. The angels dead means the chimera also dying off, or so Parker theorizes. Britain is liberated from the chimera, though the rest of Europe is a different story, still occupied by the chimera, ready for us in maybe Resistance 2. Hale was presumed dead in the reactor explosion, but an after-credit scene shows us that's not true, and we're all ready to keep fighting the chimera another day. That's the story for Resistance Fall of Man. A lot of Fall of Man's story's success can be traced back to the very beginning. The effects of the Chimeran invasion on the world is conveyed to the player really well without actually showing us what exactly we're dealing with. We know they're alien, they're intelligent and patient, and when they attack, destruction just spreads like an infection. But that mystery of what is doing this is left to the player to experience for themselves. Now, it doesn't take long before you do see the chimera for yourself, but the mystery sticks around the whole journey simply due to learning about how people get infected by the chimera, how they convert people into these monsters, and the different shapes and sizes the chimera come in, as well as all the crazy technology at their disposal. The chimera steal the show, much like the Helghast do in Killzone. They're just such an interesting threat to face in battle, and Insomniac absolutely nailed that feeling of making the chimera feel dangerous. They carry the story in a lot of ways, at least in regards to intrigue, and making me excited to see what other information and lore could be hiding just around the corner. Outside of the chimera, I thought the way Fall of Man's story was told was a smart choice. Yes, we play as Hale, but the story is being narrated by Parker, who one has a speaking voice that draws me in every time. And again, because we're playing the game as Hale, Parker is telling a story, but we are experiencing the reality. And that makes for a fun little game of what is being left out by Parker. I think there is a lot to really enjoy about Fall of Man's story, but it definitely has that feeling of Insomniac hoping they can continue expanding on this world, as the ending concludes the battle for Britain, but leaves the Chimera alive elsewhere, and the after credits scene begs for a sequel. This point isn't really a negative because we did get further installments, but those sorts of story elements are always a gamble. It's a fun story to experience overall though. It's a great what if or alternate reality we get to experience here in Fall of Man, and it makes me want to jump straight into Resistance 2 to learn more about this world and the Chimera threat, which is a great sign. As much as I really enjoyed Fall of Man's story, gameplay is Insomniac's bread and butter. They make fun games, and for the most part, even all these years later, Resistance Fall of Man is no exception. Let's start off with the basics though. Being a console first-person shooter from the early 2000s, how does Fall of Man control? Pretty well actually. It took me a couple of levels to get the hang of everything, tweak the button layout and sensitivity to my liking, but it feels more or less natural, which is someone who has an ingrained bias of if it doesn't feel like Halo straight away, it doesn't feel natural, is impressive. The controls being highly customizable was much appreciated and definitely helped me feel more at home quicker. In true Insomniac style, the weapons are just a good time. Not as wacky and weird as their other games, which given they wanted to make a gritty game, makes sense, but they feel great to use. You've got assault rifles, SMGs, shotguns, snipers, Gatling guns, rocket launchers, all of which have a secondary fire option. Your carbine has a grenade launcher. The shotgun can turn into a double barrel shotgun. The bullseye has a tagger which allows you to bend bullets. The auger has a shield on top of having the standard ability to shoot through walls. The Gatling gun can launch out a turret, slow down time with the sniper, and readjust your rocket mid-flight with the rocket launcher. All of these weapons are just a good time to use, and in the heat of combat, mixing and matching your weapons to fit the situation is a lot of fun. The mine launcher sucks in my opinion. Didn't use that one much, but all the others are great. I think some guns like the auger in the beginning or the Gatling gun in general don't get enough ammo to fully utilize them as much as I would have liked, but then again, that did cause me to use other guns like the bullseye more, which I didn't appreciate to its fullest until much later in the game. Thankfully, Fall of Man allows you to appreciate these weapons in your own time though, as you can carry the full arsenal. No 2 or 3 weapons, here's the lot and have fun, which is what I love to see, and here you'll need all the help you can get. The Chimera are no joke, and if you aren't careful despite your arsenal, you'll quickly be on the back foot if you take this threat lightly. In the beginning you don't have much to worry about, just the standard Chimera and some spider swarms. Not too bad at all. It's once they introduce all the different Chimera types and just say, here's a legit battle scene, fight them all, where it does get crazy. When you have to deal with the entire Chimeran hierarchy, it is a mix of pure sweat and terror meets trying to think calmly to pick the best weapon for the job in that brief situation. The Chimera pose a real threat. They could be a little less bullet spongy though, which would probably in turn help the ammo situation, but I just can't get over that feeling of satisfaction when you conquer these massive battles. The big Chimeran enemies as well. Some again maybe taking a little too much damage to take down, but they're another enjoyable challenge as they do destroy your health bar if you get too cocky. There is some unfair situations the game throws at you from time to time though, like clearing out a room of enemies, but the next wave not activating until it feels like you're in the worst possible position. That is BS, no doubt about it, and when you pair that with some hit and miss checkpoints potentially making you replay pretty hefty chunks, yeah, that can drain your enthusiasm really quickly. But it's not a constant issue. There are also quite a few vehicle segments to play through that are also a good time. They aren't a common occurrence, at least they don't feel like it, but they break up the monotony before it sets in, and if you were getting beaten bad by the Chimera beforehand, well, taking it out on them in a tank makes all your worries just disappear. However, the game likes to also mix in these mines to break up the pace, I guess, and it's odd to say the least. I mean, just look at it in comparison to the rest of the game. It's an odd choice. Overall though, I honestly had a great time playing Fall of Man from start to finish. The controls felt great, the weapons are something special, the Chimera feel like a legit threat, and those massive battles are a serious highlight. Not to mention, when the game wants to, the atmosphere can be incredibly thick and intense. It's not perfect, again, let's tone down those enemy health bars, don't have the Chimera appear out of nowhere, consistent checkpoints, and do away with these mines would have made it hard for me to complain. But as it is, I had a hard time doing that anyway. 15 years later, the game is just a good time to play. Resistance Fall of Man was a whole lot better than I remember it being. Now, I always loved this game and I had a lot of fond memories, but I also had this one prominent memory that the game just wasn't the best time to play. I'm not sure why I thought that, but I now know I was wrong. Replaying Fall of Man all these years later has given me a new appreciation for this game. I loved the beginning to this series story. It sets up such an intriguing villain in the Chimera and answers some questions and leaves others to your imagination for now. The gameplay is where I was blown away. I had a blast fighting the Chimeran forces, using the numerous weapons, slaying thousands of Chimera, and again those bosses and big battles are a thing of beauty. The challenge wasn't perfectly done and there can be points of frustration for sure. But if you haven't played Resistance Fall of Man or are looking for an excuse to revisit it, all I can say is the game holds up incredibly well today. Might be a little brown for some, but that's the times. And I can easily say Fall of Man has gotten me really excited to revisit the rest of the Resistance series. But until then, this has been my Resistance Fall of Man retrospective.